In this video, I want to talk about spiritual intelligence. Usually, we think of intelligence as one thing that is somehow a character trait that can be measured with, as you know, the IQ test. But in the recent years, researchers have found out that intelligence is actually made up of very different components. Some even say that these different lines of intelligence are completely independent. But even if they are not, there are different aspects of intelligence that can be developed and that are developed to differing degrees in us humans. So we might have someone who has a high level of cognitive intelligence, which is the ground level, which is the basis, the foundation to all other intelligences. Intelligences? What's the plural? I don't know. And one of these lines of intelligence that is very interesting is spiritual intelligence. And when I first learned about it, it wasn't too easy for me to understand, and I had to put some effort into really grasping the concept of what it actually means to be spiritually intelligent. And I also, first of all, learned about this concept from Ken Wilber. Ken Wilber describes the different lines of intelligence as part of our human development. And he does that in his book Integral Meditation, which I really recommend. And one of these lines of intelligence is spiritual intelligence. What does it mean? I came to understand spiritual intelligence as our way, when we are in this dualistic world, to explain to ourselves the experience of oneness. The explanations we come up with for this fundamental reality, for this thing that is also called God, which is the basis of reality, which is existence itself, which fundamentally is one thing, where there is not even a where there cannot even be distinguished between consciousness and the contents of consciousness, where everything is fundamentally nothingness and everything at the same time. And so we have this experience which can happen during, let's say, the lifetime of a human being. And then when the human being comes back from such an experience and maybe thinks about the experience and tries to come up with an explanation for it because it's so radical, then that is where spiritual intelligence comes in. When you have someone who is, for example, believing in Christianity, in the mystical aspects of it, where he sees God as some kind of figure and maybe also has knowledge of the devil and sees himself as separate from this thing which is God, then the explanation he's likely to come up with is very different from someone who has no spiritual knowledge at all, or someone who has really studied different religions, different mystical traditions. And it will still be very, very different for someone who has studied Ken Wilber's work, for example, and higher stages of integral development, where you are really seeing all of existence from a very different map. And we have to see that whenever we explain this mystical experience to us, this experience of oneness, we are always doing it in a dualistic way. So there fundamentally have to be differences in the way we explain it, because when it is dualistic, it is just one way of explaining it. It can just be one single part of the whole and never the whole itself. So every explanation by default is not it. So we can come up with many different ways to explain it. And there are more sophisticated ways of explaining all of reality to us, and there are less sophisticated. And the way we understand this is very much in line with our development along the stages of spiral dynamics. So when we are, for example, on a mystical stage of cognitive development, our understanding of a experience, of an enlightenment experience, will be on that stage, usually. And when we are, for example, in an integral, in a maybe even choral stage of development, where we are seeing and really feeling in our everyday awareness our oneness with everything, we feel cosmocentric, so to speak, then our explanation of these waking up experiences will differ greatly from someone on a mystical stage. And so what I came to understand about spiritual intelligence is that it's a continuous process of integrating more and more of these deep insights we can have in an awakening experience, and to pull back more out of that and integrate it into our understanding of the world. Because how we understand the world is separate from waking up. While in waking up there is only this oneness, and there is only this absolute truth, this nothingness, this being integrated into the whole of the cosmos. It's very different from what we do in our lifetime as humans, which is usually the path of growing up, to coming to a more complete understanding and integrating ever more parts of this wholeness, of this oneness, of this experience of being one with everything. I'm continuing to repeat myself here, but there are not many other words I can come up with to describe it. So pulling back from that experience into our separateness as humans is where the spiritual intelligence comes into play. And the greater we can develop this intelligence, the better will be the way we interact with the world, because we understand more fully what we actually are on a fundamental level, and that changes everything and how we act and interact with the world. So to sum this up, there are different intelligences which are I believe they are interlinked. So once we develop some parts of our intelligence, they also have some trickle-down effect, so to speak, into other areas of intelligence, but still they can be developed to different degrees in different people. And what we want to do is to try to develop all of them. And that's why it's important not only to have a spiritual practice, but also to learn and to grow in the other areas of life. If it's social interaction, emotional intelligence, introspective intelligence, moral intelligence, there are so many different aspects to intelligence that it really needs a complete approach to address all of these different areas, and not to be too focused on just one area of development and completely neglect the other ones. That will probably not lead to the most satisfying life, which I'm sure you are after. And with that being said, I think that's a good first introduction into the topic of spiritual intelligence. I will surely make and pick up this topic in future videos. So thank you for watching and see you in the next video. Goodbye.